Welcome to the deep dive.
Great to be diving in.
Today we're really getting granular on just one chapter from the Bible. That's 2 Chronicles 36.
Right. It's a powerhouse chapter, though. Kind of wraps up the whole story of the kingdom of Judah.
Exactly. Our goal here is to really unpack the chain of events in this text. It's a guide through, well, a pretty dramatic end and a surprising new beginning.
Absolutely. It covers the final kings, the fall of Jerusalem, the exile, and then that unexpected twist at the end.
So let's set the scene. We're jumping in right after the death of King Josiah. He's often seen as, a pretty good king, a reformer.
Yeah, you might expect a period of stability to follow him.
But that is not what we get here. The text says the people of the land immediately made Josiah's son, Jehoahaz, king.
Chosen by the people, which is interesting. He was 23.
But his reign, incredibly short, wasn't it?
Incredibly. Just 3 months in Jerusalem.
3 months. What happened?
Egypt happened. Specifically, Necho, the king of Egypt. He came in, deposed Jehoahaz, and levied this heavy tax.
A tax? How much?
100 talents of silver and a talent of gold, which was a lot. And then he took Jehoahaz off to Egypt.
Wow. Okay, so the people choose a king, and boom, 3 months later, Egypt takes him out, taxes the kingdom, and drags the king away. That's a rough start to the post-Josiah era.
A definite loss of sovereignty right there. And Necho wasn't finished.
No. What else?
He takes Jehoahaz's brother, Eliakim, and puts him on the throne.
Installing his own guy.
Exactly. And the text makes a point of saying Necho changed his name to Jehoiakim.
That name change feels significant, like marking him as Egypt's appointee. So how did Jehoiakim do? Did things stabilize?
Well, he lasted longer, reigned 11 years, starting at age 25. But the assessment is blunt. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord his God.
That familiar phrase, a sign of trouble, usually. And under Jehoiakim, another big player enters the scene, right?
Yes, Babylon, King Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah.
The text says Nebuchadnezzar came against Jehoiakim, bound him in bronze shackles.
Shackles to take him away.
Seems that was the plan, yeah, to take him to Babylon. So first, Egypt interferes. Now Babylon is asserting dominance.
And this is where the temple first gets drawn into the conflict in this chapter.
It is. Nebuchadnezzar took articles from the Lord's temple and put them in his own temple in Babylon.
Oof. That's more than just looting, isn't it? It's like a statement.
Absolutely. It's symbolic domination, placing Judah's sacred items under the authority, so to speak, of Babylon's gods.
A really powerful image of shifting power. The text kind of breezes past the rest of Jehoiakim's reign, mentions other records, and then moves to his son.
Right. Jehoiachin takes over. He was only 18.
Another young king. And his reign, any longer than Jehoahaz's 3 months.
Barely. 3 months and 10 days.
Wow, even shorter, effectively.
And the same verdict. He also did evil in the eyes of the Lord.
So that's 3 kings in rapid succession, 2 reigns lasting just months, and all described negatively. What happens to Jehoiachin?
Nebuchadnezzar again. In the spring, the text says, he sent for Jehoiachin and brought him to Babylon.
And Nebuchadnezzar took more things from the temple this time, too.
He did. More articles of value went with Jehoiachin to Babylon. You see this escalating plunder. First some items, now more.
It really paints this picture of the kingdom being stripped bare piece by piece, leadership failing, sacred objects disappearing. Who's next? Who does Nebuchadnezzar put in charge now?
He appoints Jehoiachin's uncle, Zedekiah, as king.
So the 4th king in this short, chaotic period, and the 3rd one installed by a foreign power, Egypt first, now Babylon twice.
Correct. Zedekiah becomes king at 21.
And he reigns for a while, doesn't he? Like Jehoiakim.
11 years, yes. Same length.
Does this longer reign mean a change in direction? Did he, break the pattern?
Sadly, no. Same assessment. Did evil in the eyes of the Lord his God. But the text actually gives us more detail about Zedekiah's failures.
Oh, like what specifics does it mention?
2 key things. First, it says he did not humble himself before Jeremiah the prophet, who spoke the word of the Lord.
Ignoring the prophet. That's a recurring red flag in these accounts.
Definitely. Resisting that divine guidance. And the second thing.
What was it?
He rebelled against Nebuchadnezzar. Now, that might sound like fighting for independence, but the text frames it differently.
Oh, so?
Because Nebuchadnezzar had made Zedekiah take an oath of loyalty in God's name.
Okay. So rebelling wasn't just political, it was breaking a sacred oath sworn to the very ruler who installed him.
Precisely. The source says he broke an oath made in God's name. And it adds he became stiff-necked and hardened his heart, refusing to turn back to the Lord.
Stiff-necked and hardened his heart. That sounds like deliberate resistance, not just weakness. And this wasn't just a problem at the top, was it? The text broadens the picture.
Massively. It says, all the leaders of the priests and the people became more and more unfaithful.
All the leaders, priests and people too, more and more unfaithful. Sounds like things were really spiraling downwards.
Yeah, it suggests a pervasive issue. How did it manifest? By following the detestable practices of the nations.
Okay, adopting foreign customs rejected by their own traditions. Anything else?
And crucially, defiling the temple of the Lord in Jerusalem.
Defiling the temple itself, the very heart of their faith. So you have a king ignoring prophets and breaking oaths, and the priests and people mimicking foreign practices and desecrating the temple. What's God's response in the text to all this?
Well, first, it emphasizes persistent warnings. The Lord sent word to them through his messengers again and again.
Again and again. Why?
Because he had pity on his people and on his dwelling place. It stresses compassion as the motive behind the warnings.
So judgment wasn't the first resort. It was preceded by repeated, pity-driven attempts to warn them. How did the people react to these messengers?
It wasn't good. They mocked God's messengers, despised his words, and scoffed at his prophets.
Mocked, despised, scoffed. That's active rejection, pure contempt.
Exactly. Not just ignoring, but treating the warnings with scorn. And the text draws a direct line from this response to the outcome.
What does it say?
Until the wrath of the Lord was aroused against his people, and there was no remedy.
No remedy? That sounds final, like a point of no return had been reached.
It does. It signifies that the opportunity for repentance, offered repeatedly, was ultimately refused.
So what form did this wrath, this no remedy situation take?
Nebuchadnezzar again. The king of the Babylonians was brought against them, the instrument of judgment.
The power that had been looming and interfering now becomes devastatingly active. How bad was the destruction?
The description is brutal. His forces killed their young men with a sword in the sanctuary.
In the sanctuary itself.
Yes, and it says they spared neither young man nor young woman, old man or aged. Total, indiscriminate killing.
Horrifying. And the text connects us directly to divine action.
It does. It explicitly states, God handed all of them over to Nebuchadnezzar. The conquest is framed as a consequence delivered by God.
And the city, the temple that had already been plundered and defiled.
Total destruction this time. Nebuchadnezzar carried everything away. All the articles from the temple of God, both large and small, plus the royal treasures, official treasures. Everything went to Babylon. This was the final, complete plunder.
So those earlier instances were just a prelude.
Seems so. And then the structures themselves. They set fire to God's temple and broke down the wall of Jerusalem. They burned all the palaces and destroyed everything of value there.
Fire destruction, the temple gone, the city walls breached, the palaces burned, total annihilation. What about the survivors?
The remnant who escaped the sword were carried into exile to Babylon.
Exile, servitude.
Yes, becoming servants to Nebuchadnezzar and his successors. Loss of land, freedom, identity.
And the text mentions how long this lasts.
It does. It says this lasted until the kingdom of Persia came to power.
Okay, setting up the next phase of history. And there's that interesting line about the land itself during the exile.
Right. The land enjoyed its Sabbath rests. All the time of its desolation it rested until the 70 years were completed.
Sabbath rests, like the land itself needed to recover.
That's the imagery. And it ties this 70-year period directly to the prophecy of Jeremiah. It frames the entire exile as fulfilling a divinely ordained purpose and duration.
70 years of desolation and rest. And then, after all that destruction and judgment, the chapter takes this sudden turn.
A complete pivot. Right after describing the 70 years ending, it says, in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia.
Cyrus, the one who conquered Babylon, and his action is attributed
to God. In order to fulfill the word of the Lord spoken by Jeremiah, the Lord moved the heart of Cyrus, king of Persia.
Wow. The Lord moved the heart of Cyrus, a non-Israelite, a foreign emperor. That's a significant claim. Moved his heart to do what?
To make a proclamation. And Cyrus declares, according to this text, the Lord, the God of heaven, has given me all the kingdoms of the earth.
A Persian king saying this.
Yes, and he has appointed me to build a temple for him at Jerusalem in Judah.
That is astonishing. A foreign conqueror crediting the God of the people he effectively rules over, claiming that God gave him his empire and tasked him with rebuilding the destroyed temple.
It's presented as a direct divine intervention, using an unexpected agent, the ruler of the new empire, to kickstart the restoration.
An amazing turnaround. And what did the proclamation mean for the exiled people?
Freedom to return. Cyrus finishes, Any one of his people among you, may the Lord his God be with him, and let him go up.
Let him go up. Permission, encouragement even. After 70 years, after total destruction, the New World Power says, go back, rebuild your temple. Attributed, again by the source, to God acting through Cyrus.
It brings this whole intense chapter to a close. We go from this rapid decline, kings doing evil, warnings ignored,
Priests and people becoming unfaithful, defiling the temple.
leading to that point of no remedy, the brutal destruction, exile.
The 70 years of desolation fulfilling prophecy.
And then, bam, this completely unexpected decree of hope, driven by a foreign king whose heart, the text says, was moved by God.
So, to sum up this whirlwind tour of 2 Chronicles 36, we saw that swift succession of failing kings, the growing unfaithfulness spreading through society, the repeated warnings met with contempt.
Leading inevitably, it seems, to the devastating consequences, the Babylonian destruction, the exile, the land resting for 70 years.
But ending on the surprising note of hope, initiated by Cyrus of Persia, fulfilling prophecy and allowing the return.
It's quite a narrative arc packed into one chapter. Choices, escalating consequences, divine warnings, judgment, and then unexpected restoration.
It really makes you think about that pattern laid out in the source, doesn't it? The warnings offered out of pity, the stubborn refusal leading to a point where there's no remedy, the severe outcome, and then the spark for return coming from, of all places, an external ruler acting, according to the text, under divine influence. What does that whole cycle suggest about how individual and collective choices interact with consequences and perhaps a larger unfolding plan, often in ways you just never predict? Definitely something to mull over.